Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest is a real, how should I put, one of the Top Gun people. I don't mean, flying fighter jets, but when it comes to Amazon business, you definitely want to hear from her. She's a lifelong entrepreneur, a former Amazonian, and after leaving Amazon, started a company and sold in 18 months. And now in the business still, she's very much in home, fashion, and shoes categories, and also an adventure travel enthusiast. So with that, everybody, meet my guest, Dani. Dani May. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Hi, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here, Nick.
Oh, I am so looking forward to our conversation. I have a lot to ask you. So when you and I talked, I asked you one question and you gave me a two-word answer. So tell me something that you are very good at that leads to high conversion.
I am very good at first impressions.
So tell me what that means. Because obviously, First of all, I know a few Amazon people, got to know them. You guys speak a very different language, right?
Definitely.
So when you say first impression, tell us what you really mean.
Yeah. So actually, it's not specifically an Amazon term, but it's that so what moment. So you've got a product, you've got a brand. It may have been driven through a personalization of some kind. The customer has landed on your product detail page. And then what? And that's really what I call the first impression. There's so much other content that a customer could click on. They click on yours, and then what makes them decide to stay? It has to be something really clearly delivered that is captured in that first impression, because then from there, you don't want many more clicks or your conversion is going to go down. So that first impression matters.
So what makes you good at first impressions?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things to the detail page. At Amazon, I could tell you there's no less than a dozen teams working on functions across that one page. And everything that's provided to someone selling on Amazon, the things that you can change, add A+ detail content, anything on there is very intentional because it all leads to higher conversion rate. So I look at things like its title. The title itself, Nick, I'm sure you've seen where there's everything under the sun added into a title. Every single thing you could possibly say about it. It's new, it's on sale, it's wood, it's color, whatever those things are, 48, itch, DPI. These are areas of, that I'm not actually working in with, which is electronics. But I see titles for everything that don't tell me a whole lot. So I'm not really sure when I get there, do I trust that product? And that's part of the first impression. Do you trust it? Do you believe that all those things are actually happening? And so that's one of the first pieces I look at.
So I want to ask you something. So I'm, as someone who knows this business very well, this business being what works on Amazon, because you've done this. My philosophy is this. When somebody does a search and you come up, other than the sponsored listings, because obviously everybody pays for the clicks and you show up based on your bidding for the sponsor. So that's okay. But the goal is to get ranked organically, right? So you come up organic. So when people are looking at search results, they are looking at two things: your title and your picture, right? So that's the basis of them saying, okay, this may be something I want to look at more. Obviously, Amazon provides more information. Now you see the flags for the seller's country and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's the title and the picture. Once you click, now you are on the product page, you have everything else. My philosophy is, and I may be wrong, title is not as important on the product page as it is when they are looking at the search results. Is that correct?
I think once you're on the product page, the shopper will compare, like, are all those things that I read in the title delivering in the bullet points or in the description? So there's a sense of, and that's what I'm talking about, where the consumer trust lives. Do I believe that what I clicked on is delivering it? Yes.
So confirmation, they're looking for confirmation.
Yes, absolutely. And there should be within the imagery a feeling, like something that it not a depending on what the product type is, but not something that might be so obvious, something a little unexpected, something like, oh, this is different about this company or this product that is a little more interesting than what you would normally see. Now, if you're buying batteries, that probably doesn't matter so much.
Sure.
But there are certain categories where that's incredibly relevant. Why choose this black T-shirt over this black T-shirt? Yeah.
So going back to first impression. So what I'm hearing is the buyers will be looking at confirming what they saw in the search results. And the way they are doing it, I heard you mention imagery. So your images, they are the drivers, right, on the buying decision?
Absolutely. Yeah. You validate their choice, like make it very obvious why that what you've put out there is real, and then give them something that is delightful in the imagery, something a little unexpected also to stand out. But yes.
So give us some examples of what makes imagery delightful.
Yeah, I think when you see the product in the wild, I call it, when you see it actually in use, or if you have something that is if it's home product, actually showing it in the right setting. If it's an apparel or any type of product you want to touch and feel, seeing it in motion. And it could be something in content that is as lovely and as simple as someone that you have that you know, or an influencer, or it could be something that is more of an actual formal shoot. But there's always a way to make it a little more interesting.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I do with my clients is we kind of storyboard the images. Yeah. Then we decide what will be the images, and what you mentioned, the product being in use, we call them use cases. So have at least 3 different use case photos that are being used by different people in different circumstances, if it's clothing or a home product or whatever the case may be. So people get an idea, because there may be even business use, in some cases. Absolutely. For some products. So showing that. The other ones that packaging is important, especially if it's something consumable, somehow showing the ingredients label, all the counts of different ingredients, whatever the amount is. So those things, so that goes to, I assume, trust, right?
Absolutely. That definitely goes into trust. And a lot of times it's hard to find, especially in CPG products, that information down as you scroll the detailed page. If you have it as an image, people could just immediately identify that, zoom in on it, read it quickly, and then move on.
Yeah. Almost like infographic images, right? That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And And it's so important to think about when you're shopping and you're looking at, I call it kind of a gallery of product page. Like it's all the different types of products you might have been searching for that hover that second. So I love to see, depending on the product, that still image of what the product is, very nicely, clearly photographed, and then show what is the second most important thing for people to know. Is it how do you use it? Is it how does it look when it's worn? What is the nutritional value? You know, whatever that absolute second thing you want them to see, as that second image for the hover. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I advocate this all the time. So especially on the main product image, but as a general theme, I always say, put something in the picture that I call it the image theme that kind of represents the brand. I'm not talking about logo. Like, for example,
right.
We're working with a client right now. They sell floor coating, epoxy coating, so that you can make your garage floor from looking real dirty to really sparkly and clean. So, but it's a protection for the floor. So I said, well, create a theme like one of those medieval shields that represents protection. So I said, make that like a theme. So it's like almost like a seal of approval on every picture you have. So it sits somewhere in the corner. This is us. This is our product. So building an image theme like that into a picture and a series of pictures. And by the way, that theme would then carry throughout all the pictures across the board, different versions of it. I am often pushed back, saying, why do we need that? We don't see that with anybody else. So as an Amazon person, is that beneficial? Does it make the picture stand out? Does it violate any Amazon policies or anything like that? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the policy piece first. It does not violate a policy if there's not, if it's a signal, and which when I say signal, for this example, the shield and protection, or if you're buying something that's like, baby laundry detergent that's fragrance free, you're usually going to see it in a white or a soft pastel color. These are signals to a customer that says, oh, I recognize this, this look or this emoji or a symbol or whatever. And that means something to me because it's part of, the mark of our society, what we've been brought up with. Absolutely fantastic. If the signal that you're using doesn't make a claim that you'd actually have to be certified for, then totally fine. Doesn't validate any policies at all. If there's symbols that you want to add, like if you're buying a coffee machine and you want Specialty Coffee Association symbol, you'd have to have obviously the validation of that. But I think bringing that into your brand, super beneficial. And always keeping that mark in a consistent place on the imagery, also very beneficial. Not moving it around from one image to another, because as customers scroll quickly, if something's a little bit off on a symbol like that or a signal to them, it causes kind of like why is this changed? What's different? And you want them to pause and think, oh, we're different, but you don't want them to think that you're different because of something like, just a touch off either.
Great. I'm going to reference this episode to everybody I work with, because you cannot believe, I advocate. I say to them, look, guys, let me do this for you. Just go search. Whatever the search term is for your product. Now look at everything that comes up. Now imagine this picture, and of course, the ones that show up at the top, they've achieved the top ranking. So clearly they're successful. They're getting the order flow. But you are competing against this guy. And if you are lucky enough to show up right next to them, why would they click on yours? It's not because of the title. It's going to be how the picture. And imagine having a differentiator in the picture. That makes a big difference. It increases your click-through rate. And then, of course, it builds confidence. And I often get a pushback. The reason is, well, we don't see this anywhere. Nobody does this. Excuse me, you're not going to be successful by doing what everybody else does, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I'm so glad you confirmed. I was actually nervous waiting to see what you were going to say. But this is great. So so pictures are important. So let's talk about the bullets. Now, how important are the bullets, and what should be the theme of the bullets?
Yeah, I think they need to be very simple and clear. There are some things you might need to explain. But for example, I'll use a brand that I've worked with in the past, and they have ingredients that they list, but they want to talk about why these are healthy benefits. And they put that all into the bullets. And that's not, to me, the right place for that information. It's wonderful to highlight wellness benefits. Studies show increases quality of sleep or things like that. But that's where I believe the A+ detailed content comes into being critical, is when you have something more complex to explain, do so in imagery and the short paragraphs that show, not just tell.
I see. So don't use the bullets as the features and benefits area. Instead, build that into the imagery.
Yes.
And what do you do with the bullets? What is the best way to utilize the bullets?
I think you can highlight all of the topics you want to cover in the bullets, like the benefits, why us, are we a sustainable company, things about that, but don't make them into paragraphs. It's, you don't want a consumer having to spend 10 minutes reading your bullets. That's where I think when you have a lot to talk about, when you want to show a lot of things to somebody, that's where you rely on the piquing the interest, scroll down to learn more.
I see. Okay. So the other concept that I advocate when building the bullets is to make an emotional connection between the product and the buyer by speaking to the experience they are going to have by using the product. So for example, and also, by the way, in this, emphasize the positive. But for example, looking to have an uninterrupted sleep, for example, for something. So that's not benefits. It's the outcome. And of course, anybody who keeps waking up in the middle of the night and they cannot really sleep and they wake up restless, somebody they see uninterrupted sleep. That's that they're gonna look at it, right? So that will make a connection. So rather than list the features and benefits, look for ways to have some kind of an emotional connection. What do you say about that approach for building the book?
I love that approach. The bullet points are doing a couple of things in their job, right? They're validating the title. They're helping the search algorithm understand what you're about. And yes, emotional connection is critical for conversion, period. People don't just buy a product, they buy a reason to buy a product. And that's where the bullet points can be very handy. And I think when you can deliver that and do it very clearly in 1 to 2 sentences max, you're on the right track.
And as far as the bullets, so Amazon always changes the rules. So one of the things that I always tell people, guys, always expect the only constant is change. And they do this deliberately because by the time you figure out the rules, everybody's now gaming the system. They need to come up with something different. So it's a given. So until a few months ago, the general best use of the bullets was to capitalize a question right at the beginning and then continue the rest in lowercase. but I'm told now that's not accepted. What is
Yeah, they do change the rules quite a bit, and capitalizing in general in bullet points is frowned upon. And Nick, have you ever experienced a seller where they don't ever want to touch their product detail page again because they made a change once and got their listing was removed? It usually happens in those bullet points, and so you're probably familiar too with people not ever wanting to touch them again. But it's critical that you do, because they do change those rules, and I don't know, because even when I worked there, they wouldn't tell internal people at Amazon what all the search algorithms that go into things. But I know that the bullet points are a critical piece of it. So you always have to be updating it, but you can't be afraid.
Yeah, well,
How do you balance that, right? How do you balance doing it confidently?
it becomes stale, and then there is also new trends coming out, so you need to be always tweaking things. So we'll get to the analytics aspect of it in a minute, but I want to really dissect the product page. So we've covered the title, the pictures, and the bullets, and the next one is the description, right? So, but description gets replaced by A+ pages.
Yes. It used to be the description was very much at the top of the product detail page, and now it's all the way at the bottom. And so I look at the description just as like a search function, like it's a little more catnip for the search to know more about you. But A+ detail is really where the meat happens. And there's a lot of really large brands that don't do a good job with that. A lot of people will say, oh, A+, I have to do all this content. I don't have, the resources for that. And I look at, there's built-in things there like charts. You can make your own comparison. It doesn't have to be the most highly evolved photo shoot imagery, fully retouched and all of that. There's a lot of tools in there that you can use simply by typing them in. And then I see, companies that do an amazing job with A+ detail pages, and they do have resources, but also I see ones that don't. So really, I think one thing Amazon does a great job with is they arm you as if you know how to use it, they arm you with the tools to do a great A+ detail page, and your description, although it's at the very, very bottom now, doesn't have to suffer.
Mm-hmm. So A+ pages replace the description, right? Description doesn't show up if there's A+. So the other thing that I don't really, to this day, I don't have a straight answer. People heavily advocate, no, this is how it is. First of all, the easy one, A+ pages don't get indexed by Amazon algorithm, right?
Not necessarily.
Really?
So the what I mentioned about keying in the text, one of the best features of A+ detail content is the comparison that you can control. So you can either take control of how you want your product compared against your other products, potentially, but the customer can directly click on those, keep them involved in your own brand's loop, versus what Amazon will do is, people who looked at this also looked at, or comparison features. Those are going to come into your page regardless. Mm-hmm. But it depends on, do you want to control that, or would you rather Amazon control that?
Sure.
And A+ detail content will appear above those algorithms. I mean, those personalization pieces. And so I think that actually does get indexed because it's text. Imagery, it's more difficult. But if you can put a comparison piece together that you're saying, here are the bullet points that matter, and they're all in text that you're inputting into that content, it's, in what I've seen, almost a training for Amazon's own, personalized widgets to look at, because it doesn't want to show something below that doesn't match what the story you're trying to tell. it'll look inconsistent to the customer.
So the text content in the A plus pages get indexed.
Yes.
Okay, this is new. I did not, because all the time what I heard was A plus pages don't get indexed, but the images, that page gets indexed by Google, so it's useful to drive external traffic. And the other thing I heard is the alt tags for images in the A plus content, they get picked up also by Google.
They do. Yeah, for Google, for sure. For Amazon, it's not going to be picked up from a search algorithm standpoint. It's going to be noticed by the personalization widgets. And that's where it's a different type of indexing, but it's equally as relevant.
Sure, yeah. The other one is the description. So how about somebody who doesn't have A plus content? They have description. Does the description field contents, do they get indexed by Amazon search?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Just because the placement has moved doesn't mean that it's not paid attention to. I think that if you look at, and again, like I mentioned, the search team is not very transparent with even internal employees. But when I look at the things that I've tested myself, it's almost like the page is indexed top to bottom. So for them to move description to the bottom, probably not as weighted as other things like the bullet points and the title and some of the other areas. But it's still there. It's still being noticed.
I see. Okay. So even if somebody has A plus pages, it's beneficial for them to put in the description info because it will still get indexed.
Yeah. It'll still be noticed, and not having the expertise of exactly how it's used or applied. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think in a way too, sometimes Amazon has done things within seller's ability to try to help address some of the excessive descriptions, knowing that it wasn't beneficial to the customer. And so I think that's part of the reason why they moved it.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I can see there's no need. It becomes redundant, right? So it's the same information. Okay, so let's now talk about the success of the page. What is success on a product detail page look like?
Yeah, I think the success on that page is that you get the add to cart, right, from the page. Real success means that the customer checks out with less than 2 more clicks. The more they have to click around and look at here's your product. Oh, well, what did somebody else buy? Oh, let's go back and see what the other options are. The more you didn't really make that first impression very clear. And it's just kind of typical e-com. The more clicks, the lower the conversion.
Right.
Period.
So the success means that somebody clicks add to cart and then they check out.
Yes.
So when I buy stuff on Amazon, I'm never buying just one thing. So it's always a number of things. So it's naturally there are many clicks before I check out. So that's not really because of the product that I may have added to the cart first. But does that affect anything, or it's a conversion, right? Conversion is a conversion.
No, there's an add to cart. There's also the buy now button, which I really like, so that you could just, you want this and but you can continue to shop. I do think that the way that the cart is used with Amazon customers in many cases is that it becomes like a ongoing shopping list or an ongoing wish list. There's tons of things in the save for later. It's wonderful if your product's still in the save for later, because it will drive what the customer comes back to on the homepage. It's still sitting in the cart, so it's like continue shopping for, or it will just go right back into your product detail page. So it's always a good sign when people just keep it there too. But still, like, don't have them, but have them get it there. Have them put it in the cart. I didn't say that they necessarily, have to just buy one, like they're only shopping for batteries that day. It is a situation where you start a shopping process, you go back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, I want to get this too. You're laying in bed at night, surfing Amazon again. So it's definitely a bundled shopping, but just get it in the cart somewhere.
Yeah. So is there a benefit? Does Amazon measure that if somebody puts the item in a cart but they don't check out? But is it different than not putting it in a cart? And how is that measured?
Absolutely. So internally at a category level, we definitely look at that because we want to understand potential. This kind of helps us understand demand. And that it may not be at necessarily an individual ASIN level, but I recall when I was there having a really important issue around a hot selling sneaker with a brand we had just recently brought into the Amazon fold. They became a first party seller, so not so much marketplace, but they were on marketplace as well. And that's a whole different conversation for another day when you're competing with a brand and selling the same product. But in this case, we were able to clearly see how much lost sales we had in a category because this was out of stock, and we couldn't get it back in for 30 days. And so yes, absolutely. If something's just in the cart, we're looking at that. We're looking at lost conversion potential, mostly around out of stock. The in-stock rate is talked about every single day in that company. And if something's in there and we have to post a message saying we're not sure when we're going to get this product back, that's a terrible thing. There's a special metric for that as well. And so we always want to look at what's sitting out there.
So the information being available in Seller Central about what do you call that first? Lost in conversion? Is that what you call it?
I don't know. I don't think it's called lost conversion. I believe that the reporting is all based on the demand reporting. It was in beta, I think about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. But they've been coming quite a long way with the reporting for demand.
Okay. So what is the best way to locate? So it's on demand reporting. Is that how they should look for it?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple different ways you can navigate. There's canned reports around that. And even in the advertising section, if you are doing paid marketing, you're going to have some reporting that includes demand, as well as creating a custom report.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm always looking for different ways to get a handle on numbers, so to speak. So the other question I have is I want to hear your take on conversion rates. So what is a conversion rate to benchmark against? I know this is different for every category, but can you share with us some of what you would like to achieve as a seller?
Certainly. Well, Amazon has a much higher conversion rate than a standalone website. For me, a standalone website, if your conversion's below 3%, you're not truly profitable. And it's kind of like the general gauge I use. With Amazon, and again, depending on category, if you're what we call spear fishing, so you're on Amazon, you want to buy a picnic basket, and you are looking at 2 or 3 and you pick one. It's very specific. You just want that. Or if you're just trying to get a vitamin. If you are in a category like that, your conversion is much higher. It could be in the 20s. If you are in a category like a dress to wear to a wedding, that's a lot of looking. It's a lot of search, and it could be, a month in the making. And that conversion rate would be very, very low. Usually around, on a platform like Amazon with so many choices, probably closer to 1. on that particular, what to wear to a wedding category, wedding guest category. So it does span, I think, on average across Amazon, they're probably in the high single digits, low teens when you bundle everything together. Like you said, most people, when we shop, we're shopping a few different categories. Sometimes it's a one and done. I just want to get my picnic basket and move on. Other times it's, you're creating to check out over a course of, several categories and days.
So this is one of my subjects that I'm very much interested in, because I always advocate that in my book, there are two magic bullets for success on Amazon. If you get these right, the rest will pretty much fall in its place. First magic bullet is, how do you increase the click-through rate in the search results? Because the higher the click-through rate, the more people ending up on your product page. So you've got a larger audience that is pretty much captive while they are on that page. They're not looking at anything else unless they scroll down, look at the others. But they are there for a reason. So there, you brought them. So how do you increase the click-through rate? Of course, there are different ways to increase it, but that's one. It starts with tracking it in the first place. Most people don't know. So that is one metric I'd like to keep on top of. The second one, and that really is the one that pretty much seals the deal in every sense of the word, and that is the conversion rate on the page, on the product page. So out of the people that you brought to the page, how do you increase the conversion rate so that more and more people end up buying the item? So that's why I was questioning you in a way that, how do we get better results? And of course, result looks like a higher conversion rate. So, and I look for benchmarks to measure against. So I found this article says industry average 12%. So when I work with my clients, I color code numbers, and anything below 35%, it drops into yellow, and anything below 10%, it becomes red. That means something is wrong. So you have to achieve more than 10%, and then you have to achieve more than 35% if you really want to be satisfied. But frankly, I say more than 50%, because people have come to the page and they're looking for it. They found it. Now they have to buy it. You're not convincing them.
Yeah.
Figure out a way to convince. So I'm told I have very high standards.
Well, there's a funnel, right, with conversion. So conversion rate from a detail page should be higher than a conversion rate from the time they stepped onto Amazon to shop for that picnic basket.
Yeah.
And so when I think about conversion rate on Amazon, I'm talking about end to end.
Okay.
But yes, I do think you have a little bit of high standards. 50% is pretty darn good. I'm going to say.
But my clients get 35. Where do you think I got the 35% from?
That's fantastic. No, keep doing what you're doing. And I agree with you. I mean, I think that should be attainable if it all comes back to the content, right?
Right.
It all comes into play. And you mentioned something earlier I thought was interesting with indexing. So when search results come out, just to get them to click on the detail page, that's image, right? And title, absolutely. Sometimes if you're lucky, one of your videos that you posted will get picked up as well. Once you're on there, the area that doesn't get indexed the best, except for the text descriptions I mentioned, is A+ content. So the A+ content is, in my opinion, one of the number one things that leads to conversion. When I was there, granted this was a bit ago, tested. same page, A plus content, non-A plus content. The conversion rate difference was staggering. And yet that is an area that gets probably underlooked because it is not considered the highest search index. So it's almost like you have to work that detail page in two different ways. First impression from a search, conversion in the impression once they get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is, you can dig deeper and deeper into this and then make it better and better. And I don't know that if you ever get the point of diminishing return, because conversion is everything. So I don't think there is anything to diminish. So the more Absolutely. You do, the better. And I had a guest earlier, and she was talking about brand feed. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about brand feed, and how does it help conversion?
Yeah, I love the features that they have introduced in the last probably 18 months. I think that a while ago, brand stores didn't matter. And now I think they're super important. You see a certain type of items you like, could be like sheets. Well, what else do they have? Such a great way to cross-sell your brand. And I also love the posts, like the ability to essentially utilize your own social media and leverage that inside of Amazon with the posts function. So this is something that I did not expect them to offer to sellers. I mean, they don't even offer it to first party vendors, but to be able to go in and show that content and post every day and have it picked up. And I'll just give you a little secret. Always use a hashtag founded on Amazon. If you have a in the wild, like it's a influencer you're working with, or it's your niece and she's adorable and she's using it, whatever the product is, some type of social media worthy post, hashtag founded on Amazon, because Amazon does look at that hashtag heavily and repurposes if it matches approved content. Will feature that in their own social media streams.
So when you and I talked first, you mentioned the hashtag so this is the hashtag you were referring to?
Yes. Yeah. The founded on Amazon, but use it in the Amazon posts that you post yourself through Seller Central. You can write a description. You can put a hashtag. Always use that one. Until they realize that people are using that too much, and then they decide to do something else. Right?
Sure, yeah, of course. But this is very useful. So this is for brand registry sellers, yes. Right? Yes. They have this feature called posts, and inside there they should create their post and then put the hashtag founded on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, make that influencer content that people are paying good money for really work for you. Not just on TikTok and Instagram, but use it right inside of Amazon. It's very powerful.
Yeah, influencer marketing is becoming key. So I'm sure you watch Shark Tank, right?
Yes.
So Mr. Wonderful was I think it was an interview that they had with him. So they asked him about the professions of today, what are good jobs? And he was saying that, if you asked me this question like 20 years ago, the answer was always doctor, engineer, lawyer, whatever. He says today, totally different. If you are a video editor, you are a writer, or you are an influencer, these are very high value professions now. So it's a whole different world, right? So, and also it appeals to young people, and they make money, and then they have the kind of life that, totally free. They don't care about office. They don't care about work hours, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a whole different world. So when you and I met, I said to you, I usually bring up a question, and I said, I'm going to ask you the same. And he said, so here is the moment. So if there is one thing you could change in Amazon's policies for third-party sellers, what would that be?
Yeah. So I've thought about that a lot when we first chatted too. I have to admit it's a policy that I helped write and then audited, which is called Manufacturers on Amazon, which means that if you are a branded manufacturer and you sell to Amazon directly, you can't also sell on Marketplace, and vice versa. If you become very successful in Marketplace and Amazon wants you to sell to them first party, that you have to be open to doing so, or potentially not, be on the platform. So it's a very interesting policy. And at the time, it was to protect fraud, to protect fraudulent products, and there was a good value for the consumer for that reason. But I also think it's, in hindsight, there's a lot of really great brands out there that would rather keep the margins that they make as a seller and not, sell directly to Amazon. So that would be the one I would love to see changed. And the other thing, though, after we're talking right now, another policy I'd like to see change is having the search functionality more transparent. I think that just like when Google changes how they're indexing things, they do put out a white paper so all the ins and outs. It's still, you never know exactly when it's going to happen, but how to make the changes you need to. And I think that Amazon needs to get on board with that.
Do you think that will ever happen?
No.
So I remember this hearing. I'm one of those political junkies. I watch C-SPAN all the time. So and one of my favorite things I watch is hearings.
Love it.
Hearings, always, the congressional hearings. So I remember, this is going way back, when, putting your credit card was a big thing on a website. So, and privacy was just starting to become a talk. So they had the vice president of compliance from Amazon, it's a lady, testifying. So one of the senators said, let me get this straight. I come to your website. I put my name, my address, my credit card number, and I make a purchase. You have all my information. And now you're telling me I don't own that information, but you do? Explain that to me. And you know what she said? She said, Senator, the information you submit with your order, it goes through a proprietary process before we start using it. And what comes out of that process is completely proprietary. It's the result of our intellectual property. And therefore, we have 100% ownership over it, not you.
Wow. I'm not surprised by the answer, though.
And obviously, I paraphrase, but 90% of the response was like that. And it was so academic and so stop talking about things you don't understand anything about. It was almost like remember the hearing with Zuckerberg and the senators, and how silly that was.
Yes.
So that's how it was. Search obviously is very critical. So I don't see them ever releasing anything.
No. Yeah. Everything's a proprietary system there too.
Yeah. And Amazon is a very secretive company. They don't really like to.
It all stays internal. Yeah, it all stays internal. But some of their best technology, one thing I do appreciate, they'll package that and put it into an AWS package, or try to provide tools, for sellers that they've learned from. So it is all proprietary, but I do think that they love the idea of sharing some of it, because they want to have a competitive world. They want to see if somebody can take their technology and do it better.
Yeah.
Not exactly take the technology, but take the
Yeah,
the tool.
utilize,
Yeah.
because it's an ecosystem, right? It's an ecosystem. So,
Yeah.
so you said something earlier. I caught that, and you said it very softly. So you said first party seller. What you're talking about is Amazon making the purchase and Amazon becoming a vendor to a brand.
Yes.
So that's what first party is. And at the same time, you very softly said, otherwise they may lose the opportunity to sell. So what you are talking about is, if let's say I come along and I build this brand on Amazon, it becomes wildly successful, and I'm using FBA nevertheless, so Amazon is obviously making money. So what you're telling me is, according to the policy you wrote or you helped write, Amazon can come to me and say, hey, Nick, we like your product so much, we want to give you a purchase order. We want you to stop selling directly. Now, from now on, we will buy from you. And I say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm doing okay. They can say to me, in that case, you're out. Is that it?
That's the general gist of it. It's usually more for people who already have been selling to them as a first party that realize, hey, if I sell on marketplace, I make more margin, and so they create a fictitious name and start selling under that name instead. And in some cases, this has been approved. There are large shoe brands that I've worked with that created a smaller entity to sell a marketplace to kind of move through things that were no longer in season, and they just needed to retain some margin because they're going to be taking a hit on it.
Sure.
And in those cases, that's perfectly fine. It just needs to be declared. But if you were a company that worked with Amazon and they wanted to bring you on as a vendor and you said no, and this it has happened, then there could be a splitting of the relationship altogether. Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, I definitely want that change.
Yeah, definitely.
It's unfair. It's unfair.
Yeah. It's not.
Okay.
It's not fair.
Well, I tell you, this was great. Knowledge you helped me acquire. I tell you, this one I didn't know. So let's now learn a little bit about you. So tell me, where you live in Seattle, I assume, right?
Yes, I do live in Seattle.
Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in New England, and my shoe history has followed me throughout my entire life. My folks had shoe stores in the New England area, and so I grew up working at the age of 5, straightening shoes and pricing boxes.
So this was family business. Your family was entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So is that why you followed in the footsteps?
I actually did a lot of rebelling in college not to follow in the footsteps, but the punchline is that I ended up exactly loving working in shoes. And I can't walk past a shoe display that's like not organized without wanting to go and fix something to this.
But
day.
I mean, come on, the interest in shoes as a woman. I mean, that doesn't strike me as unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a sense, my parents just enabled that even further, which have a ridiculous shoe collection today, much to the chagrin of my husband.
So when you say you rebelled against it, you rebelled because we all rebel.
I didn't want to do exactly as I was encouraged to do. Like I decided I was much more interested in people and cultures and went an anthropology route, where my father would have much preferred I went business route. But at the end of the day, it kind of became a perfect marriage of what I learned growing up my whole life, watching him as a retailer, him and my mother, and understanding buying behaviors because I studied societies and how people work and relate and have that, like that you mentioned, emotional connection to something. And you put that together with the digital world coming up at the time I was graduating college, and it all came together in a very real way.
So what was the catalyst for you to actually turn from rebelling against what the family wanted to totally embracing it and actually getting good at it? What was that turn? When was it?
Yeah, I think it was the job market at the time, to be quite honest. I moved to a different state, and there was one fashion company called Chico's in that area. And I walked in with my resume, with most of it being about, I spent all this time in my whole life working in retail and buying next to, side by side with my dad, planning and buying and being a merchant. With a little bit of like, and I also spent, a semester abroad on sites, but it was happenstance. They said, "Oh, hold on one second," and brought somebody who became one of my favorite mentors from the merchant team, and then I worked with them. I hired on the spot after an hour of an interview.
So
that's good old 2000 for you right there.
So after you started working there, was it like your realization of, oh my God, I've been fighting this thing all this time, I should have done this earlier? Or was it like gradual?
It was not gradual. I actually kicked myself why I wasn't studying this for the 4 years prior. And I was given an opportunity during a huge ERP change to start working with the technology team. And I was the subject matter expert for merchandising. And then they kept me. They didn't let me leave. And that's when I first got to work in true e-com development.
Yeah. So, you reminded me of a favorite story of mine. He's now dead. Tim Russert. You remember Tim Russert?
Yeah.
So I loved when he passed away, my Sundays changed forever. I totally lost its taste. But he tells this story when he worked for former Senator Patrick Moynihan. And he was he was a lawyer. He graduated law school, Buffalo University. And he goes to work for Senator Moynihan. And all these Ivy League graduates waiting to be interviewed. So he takes one look at them, and Tim Russert, totally humble, and says, I stand no chance against these guys. So anyway, the senator takes notice of this. So he has his interview and everything, and so he goes up to him and he says, so what do you think? How do you think you did? And he goes, I don't stand a chance against these guys. And I said, why do you say that? So, I believe I'm just from Buffalo University, the son of a former general or whatever. And so he goes, walk with me. So they go out, and he says, don't discount yourself. He says, what they know, you can learn. But what you know, they will never know. So
I love that story.
Don't discount yourself. So my point is, what you knew all along, it cannot be taught. It came natural, and you found your place. And, systems and everything else you can tack on. They are just accessories, but you have it in your DNA to do this business, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. It's such a beautiful thing to find something that you've known for so long and still be very passionate about it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Dani. This was a great conversation. And so tell us how people can reach out to you, connect with you, give us your contact information. We'll put this on our website and it will get pushed out with the episode, but give us your contact info here.
Absolutely. Well, you could definitely reach me on LinkedIn. It's at Danette-May. So that's probably the best way. Anyone who would want to get in contact. I'm very good about responding on LinkedIn. I won't ghost you.
I know how disciplined Amazon people are. So
I won't do that.
Great. Thank you, Dani. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, Nick. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, yeah, anytime. And that brings us to the end of another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.